environments, the same thing in terms of, hey, if I'm doing a lesson on multi-step equations, do a search here. And then I get the search results back, and you go ahead and drag it and drop it.
Okay.
You see here on the left, it looks a little bit different than what you've seen before, because what we've added is we've added actually groups and abilities for students and teachers to add groups of resources.
Nice.
And because I'm sure you've seen lessons that I'm sure even you have Blendspaces that have like tons of resources, and then after you get sometimes more than 15, like it kind of becomes a little
right.
And so we've actually added these groups. And so what we call these groups are concepts. And all of these concepts are actually minimized at the moment.
Okay.
But let me go ahead and expand it. And when you expand a concept, there are 3 parts of a concept that now a teacher can use.
Okay.
So one part is called essentials. And this is kind of where we get into more of that differentiation piece. So one part of it is essentials, which are add resources here that every student will see.
Okay.
These are like, so remember your scenario about having, just lessons and you have resources that everyone will see. So
right.
This is kind of where action. We have an evaluation quiz in the middle, actually. And so these evaluation quizzes, it's like the quizzes that we have already on Blendspace. But what's really different about them, not only are we able to support short answer, long answer,
nice.
but at the there is a section called how many right answers are needed to pass this quiz. So this is actually a threshold. And this is where, as a teacher, you can specify, I want to make sure that students answer 2 out of the 3 questions right.
Mm-hmm.
And what ends up happening is now they get this mastery content, which is on the bottom.
Nice.
It's already kind of streamlined for already that differentiation built in. So your teachers don't need to go and make multiple copies of
right.
lessons and talk about and keep track of groups of students within the classes as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because I will also show you kind of how the class structure ends up working in this fashion.
Okay.
Do you have any questions so far?
No, this is fantastic.
Yeah, and the drag and drop, it's like all this still the same. And
okay.
We've made a lot of improvements in
right.
terms of insert. So you don't have to add, you don't have to click that plus button to go ahead and add a resource anymore.
Fantastic.
And so that's the basics of creating a lesson. A lot of the same stuff is already in there. And something to note is if a teacher doesn't want to have an evaluation quiz within this concept, they don't have to.
Okay.
But what quiz really helps with is that differentiation aspect.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and preview this lesson as a student, so you can kind of see that experience
okay.
here. And this experience is also improved in terms of providing more structure, kind of more scaffolding for the student. Because before, you give that link to the student to go through it, but basically their experience kind of looks like your experience.
Right.
And there isn't contextualized in terms of those groups of resources. So here you can see that I have to go through this first concept of single-step equations, and all of the other resources are still locked at this point.
Okay.
Which means you need to go through this first concept before proceeding on to the next one. So I, as a student, would just click start this concept. And if you can remember that lesson that we were just on, there actually wasn't any type of mastering resources there.
Mm-hmm.
And what there was actually a checkpoint. Because for me, of wanting to teach multi-step equations, I want to make sure that my students actually understand single-step equations first.
Right.
So this checkpoint actually acts as a pre-assessment. So I'm just going to go in here and fail this quiz. So you kind of happens. I'm not that terrible at math. We're going to click submit, and it says I've earned 0, and I needed a score of 2. But Blendspace says, hey, no worries. Let's work on mastering this concept. So I'm going to hit continue, and this is where all the master content comes in. And just like as I could before within Blendspace, I can choose and pick, the types of resources I want.
Right.
We've also added instruction. Instead of having instructions on the right-hand side, now we can have instructions ahead of time.
Okay.
So the students are
Okay.
And I'm going to go ahead and actually pass this. Hit submit. Awesome. I have 3 out of 2. Now I can pass. I can move on. And now the introduction concept gets unlocked.
So cool.
And then I can start this concept. And then now my teacher's actually added materials in the essential sections. I can go through these at my own pace. And then take that checkpoint again. If I decide for me that I already know multi-step equations, there's nothing that's stopping the teacher, nothing that's stopping the students from them taking the quiz automatically.
Okay.
Going from. And then so for a student, they just rinse and repeat this whole entire experience until they are done with the lesson.
That is awesome.
Yeah. What do you think so far?
I love it. That is terrific.
Awesome. I think you'll also like the next thing because, especially, in these classrooms where, you are differentiating your content, your students are going through these lessons at their own pace. Oftentimes now the role of the teacher is really changing, right?
Right.
Like they're not in the classroom dictating the same content over again because now you have a program being able to really help with that. But instead, with Blendspace for schools, how teachers are using Blendspace when their students are on board is actually through something that we call mission control. So when I actually take a look and drill into my Algebra 1 honors class, I see there's actually a notification here for that lesson, multi-step equations. There's a notification of 1. And what this means is there's one student in this class who is struggling with this lesson.
Okay.
So I'm going to go and take a look in terms of who's struggling and what does that actually look like. So you are right now being taken into an experience called mission control.
Okay.
And mission control is what we have known as kind of like the data reporting side of Blendspace. So really providing all of the insights to have a really data-driven classroom for teachers without providing them with too much noise or without having them become data scientists because teachers scientists, like it makes no sense.
Right.
So we're trying to streamline as much of the experience and just really giving them information like in real time of what needs to know.
Okay.
So what you're looking at right here is kind of the real-time dashboard. A lot of teachers kind of call it the turtle race, experience, because it kind of looks, because what it does is as students are kind of moving through the lesson,
Right.
These, people get a little, people actually do move.
Oh, cool.
So you kind of see where all of your students are at any given point in the lesson, because when you are pacing your lesson, different students can be at different places, which is, kind of the point. But for the teacher, the teacher, doesn't really know where all the students are unless, she's asking each one of them. But with the real-time mission control, she knows at a glance where each kid is. And we have that one notification before of one student struggling. And, I come into mission control and I see that, oh, it's David Kraft because there's a, red bar under, there's a notification over here. And so if I actually click into his, if I click actually into here, what I find out is, wow, David, he has actually been struggling this whole entire time, hasn't really been passing his, his checkpoints. I can take a look and drill into each one of them and see what the answer that he got or what the, correct answers were supposed to be. And so here's like a really great view for me as a teacher to actually take a look in terms of how David is going throughout the lesson and whether this is an opportunity for me to go talk to him one-on-one or is this an opportunity for me to kind of pull him out in a smaller group,
right.
With other struggling students and just, have a small group conversation. And then, after kind of the real-time use experience, a lot of teachers, what they also like looking at is looking at the whole entire class mastery view. And so what class mastery means and what represents is at a glance, like each one of these segments represents a student. And so I know that per every concept, kind of where every student is. Like, have they mastered it, which means they got all the checkpoints right? Are they almost there in terms of, oh, maybe they got, one of them right, and are they struggling, which means they completely failed it, and that would be David in this case. I mean, I can see at a glance, whether or not, kind of, are all my students kind of progressing along, or is there kind of a concept that, that folks are really struggling with? And so, for example, here with the distributed property method, I saw that none of my students have actually actually mastered it. So I can either click into the struggling section and actually decide to pull all of these students out and do a small group, with all of them.
Oh, wow.
Or, because it kind of tells you and it kind of groups these students this way.
Mm-hmm.
Or it actually tells me, I really should probably revisit this, concept holistically with the whole entire class.
Mm-hmm.
Since no one has actually mastered it yet. You're right, because it's a good insight for me as a teacher. And then the last part of mission control is the results page. And the results page is basically what the different types of assessment scores that all of your students have received, and then as a teacher or as the admin, you go ahead and download the type of report, and it's formatted as a CSV, and then they're free to do whatever they want with that data.
Very cool.
Cool. Any questions so far?
No, I love this. This is fantastic.
Awesome. And then there's one last thing to show you.
Okay.
And that is our school lessons component. So this is, around how teachers are using Blendspace, like within their own school, and an opportunity for, students or for teachers to be able to share their lessons with one another.
Okay.
And so here I can go ahead, because what we've seen, we do have a gallery within Blendspace, but this is a pretty open gallery that you can search for anything, but you kind of don't know who the teacher is behind it. And we actually, know that, most teachers don't want to just use a lesson that's created by a stranger.
Right.
They want to know that it's either within their department, within their school, maybe perhaps even within their own district. So all of this is kind of just a school-wide lesson search. So
Okay.
on the school level or on the district level. And then for me as a teacher, I can actually go ahead and search for Common Core standards.
Nice.
And I can actually look and find any of the math lessons that are associated with ninth grade, and then all of those lessons will come up. And then me as a teacher, I can go ahead and see this as a student and see if I like the lesson. And if I do like it, I can just go ahead and copy it. And it will be copied into my lesson repository. I can go in there, remix it as I currently can, just like I can with Blendspace.
Okay.
Add resources, remove resources, and then go ahead and assign it to my kids.
Very cool.
Awesome. So that shows basically, the new Blendspace for schools experience, the new editing, the new lesson creation experience, kind of the differentiation pieces, the data piece, kind of with the lesson tracking, and then also with school lessons.
It's perfect. I love it.
Awesome. Sounds great. So,
Right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. Right. Okay. Mm-hmm. I love that. Okay. Yeah, absolutely.